Hello, my name is Ian Shepherd. I'm a mastering engineer and producer, and I run the Production Advice website. And in this video, I want to give you a roundup of some of the loudness meters that are available these days as plugins for any computer audio software. Over the last few years, the most popular post on my website has been this one about how to use the TT dynamic range meter, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Times have moved on and there are more options available now, and I'm going to show you 4 or 5 plugins that you may not be aware of that will give you a different way to measure loudness and dynamic range in your music, and maybe get even more information that will be useful to you. Before we go any further though, I just want to make sure that if you haven't already seen the excellent YouTube video on the loudness war by Matt Mayfield from several years ago now, I strongly recommend you head over there and take a look. It's the best 2-minute summary of many of the key issues of why we would want to measure dynamic range and what happens when you lift up the average level of music closer to the peak level when you squash it, and the effect on the sound that that has. So please check that out now if you haven't already. I'm going to start by just recapping quickly on the TT dynamic range meter. There it is over on the right there, because it's still a great affordable way to start to get to grips with measuring the loudness of your music and thinking about the average level and how much you want to squash it in mastering or in mixing. So let's just quickly have a look at how it works. If I start playing this track here, I'm going to be using a set of songs from the Process Replaces Content EP by a great band, Betadone Distraction. I mastered this a month or 2 ago now. It's been getting some great reviews. I've deliberately chosen it because it has great dynamics within it. It gets very loud and gritty and distorted at some points, but it has some fantastic quieter moments in it as well, some great subtlety. I think it's a great mix by Roddy McIlwraith of Roddy Mac Audio. I recommend you check it out. So let's take a listen. And you can see over here, the TT meter is showing us the peak level, these thin meters on the outside. It's showing us the RMS level, which is roughly the average level. It's roughly equivalent to loudness. And it's also showing us, which was new for this meter, the dynamic range here. And if I just skip ahead and forward in the song, you can see the dynamic range start to reduce. And if I skip to one of the loudest moments, you can see that the meters turn red when the dynamic range reduces down to 8, a DR reading of 8 or less. That's basically the difference between the peak and average level of the music. And it gives you a good indication of how squashed the music is. There's been some debate about whether the DR reading, DR stands for dynamic range. It's not really a measurement of the dynamic range. It's actually closer to a measurement of the crest factor, the difference between the peak and the average level. People have talked about whether it's an appropriate way to measure music. I'm not bothered about any of that. It's a really useful tool for looking at mixes and getting to grips with these ideas. They chose the value of 8 for the meters to start to turn red. I think they chose that wisely. If you consistently push the DR value of your music less than 8, I think you're risking squashing it too much and damaging it. Let's have another look at the meter. So it's telling you the peak reading here. It's showing you the DR, the in quotes dynamic range of the left and right. It has, you can link. Maybe that gives an easier to read indication of the DR value at any one point. It has a mono button, which is handy, and it has a correlator up here, which gives you an idea of the stereo width of your material, which I find useful. The TT meter used to be free. It was developed by the Pleasurized Music Foundation in association with Brainworks, the plugin developers, and they've now changed it. In order to get the TT meter, you need to become what they call an active member of their site, which costs $30. And once you're an active member and signed into the site, there's a download link on the left here where you can get the TT meter for Mac and PC in a whole range of different VST, AU, RTAS, and also their offline meter, which will give you a single DR value for a particular song. That's a bit of a blunt instrument for learning about the dynamic range of music, but it can be a useful shorthand. And I've certainly used that talking about it, these kind of things, for Dynamic Range Day and in other places. So you're actually paying to become an active member of the foundation. So effectively you're paying $30 for access to the plugin. I still think that's great value. Now, Brainworks, the company who developed this with the Dynamic Range Foundation, have since released the BX loudness meter, the Brainworks loudness meter. It looks very similar, but they've made some changes. Let's just take a look. They've changed the color scheme by default. Personally, I prefer the original look, which they call Legacy. They've also changed the way that the meter reacts and the readings it gives. It seems to give lower DR readings than the old TT meter, and they've changed when it changes color as well, which I think is a shame. Let me just show you the two of them side by side. And I think they've changed the way that it seems to me that the TT meter is responding more slowly than the BX meter, which is maybe why it shows generally larger values. And you can see it starts to turn red and orange sooner. And even if I skip to the loudest section of this song, you can see that the color changes that they've made. But it has some other features which are quite nice. As well as a mono button, it has an S button that allows you to solo the side signal in the frequency, so you can hear what's happening at the edges of the mix instead of in the center. And you can also change whether it shows you the stereo dynamic range or DR values linked as before, or the mid and side value, so you can see the difference between how squashed the mono image and the side image in your music are. So we can see there that the mono signal is louder and more, well, no, actually probably similarly squashed to the side signal. That's quite a nice feature. You can choose left and right channels independently, and you can also choose various filters. You can choose the C-weighted filter, which gives loudness that's more closely related to the way we hear sound, and it has the Bobcats' K system metering down here. Basically just shifts where 0 appears on the meter to encourage you to mix and master more conservatively. So that's the new BX meter. Now let's take a look at an entirely new loudness meter that has just recently come out, which is the NewGen Vis-LM, Visual Loudness Meter. Here it is in the center. Now the NewGen meter measures something different than Brainworks and the TT meter. They measure this DR value, which was decided on by the guys at the Pleasurized Music Foundation. Something interesting happened last year, which was that a new international standard was agreed for loudness. It's called ITU-R BS1170-2. It was developed by the International Telecommunication Union, and it's being implemented in different parts of the world. In Europe, the standard is called R128. In America, it's called ATSC A/85. What it did is establish a new loudness unit, LU, which measures something similar to the TT meter, if I'm honest, but it also defines a short-term and a long-term measure. And because these standards are becoming adopted, they're also becoming law. In America, they're a legal requirement for broadcasters now that the volume levels of what they output is consistent to the standard. And in the UK, all the major TV broadcasters have now agreed to conform to this standard, which is very long and very technical, as you can see. So that's what these new meters are showing you. And let me give you an idea how that looks with this song. So like the TT meter, we've got an indication here of the average level of the music. And we have a graph over here, which shows us the history of the loudness of the music as it varies. It's also showing us the same as this DR measurement of the TT meter, or the same idea, but measured in a different way and displayed in a different way, the loudness range here, which I think is fascinating and one of the most useful things about this meter, because it shows you a history of how squashed the music was and how it relates to the overall loudness.
I'll help you out your cage, this infinite cell. So pack your bags and grab your children.
And the meter also gives us a measurement of what is called true peak level. This is another thing that is defined by the new standards, and it relates to the fact that when a signal is hitting 0 dB full scale, often, as is common with CDs that are mastered these days, when that digital signal gets converted back into analog, you can actually end up with output levels that are higher than 0 dB when they play out. It's a slightly counterintuitive subject. They're called intersample peaks. And the new loudness standards include oversampling meters that show those peaks happening. So let's just quickly take a look at that on one of the louder sections of this song. And you can see that the true peak value there is peaking at minus half a dB, which I actually have the limiter set to minus 0.6, which you can see is what's reading up here on the more traditional sample meter on the Brainworks meter. The true peak value of that is minus 0.5, but this song is not that loud. For comparison, we have a much louder song up here. Let's see what we get when we listen to this. So that's one of my favourite examples at the moment of the new Red Hot Chili Peppers album, which, as you can see, has a true peak value of 2.7 dBs. That's almost 3 dBs over 0. And the average level is very high and the dynamic range is very low. Those true peak levels that are over the maximum will correspond to distortion on many players. I've been noticing this a lot recently on my iPod. So that's another useful thing that a meter like this will tell us. When you're mastering, you can make sure that your true peak level stays below 0, and therefore you're not introducing any additional distortion at the final stages. So that's a roundup of the new gen meter. It's very configurable. It has a lot of options that you can use to make it work exactly the way that you need it to. One thing that I would like is for it to be possible to enhance this area of the display. You can see most of the useful information for me as a CD mastering engineer is in the top range of this graph. Incidentally, this line here at minus 23, that is the standard reference level that's going to be used in broadcast. So this CD here, the average level is probably somewhere in the middle, will be turned down to this level for playback, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers CD will be turned down for playback here. So there's all this headroom above that could be used in the dynamic range of your music or anybody else's music to make it sound better, to make it sound more interesting. And that's why I think these new loudness standards could be a very good thing for people who are concerned about the loudness wars. I've requested that they introduce the possibility to enhance this scale, and hopefully that will show up in a future version of the plugin. So now let's move to our next candidate, which is the TC Electronics LM6. This is also a ITU loudness unit measuring meter, but it has a very different display from the new gen meter. I like this one very much as well. Let's give you an idea of how that looks.
Just follow my voice. I'll bring a landslide to your front door. I'll try anything if they call it a cure.
So you can see in this case, rather than a graph that goes left to right, they've chosen to display the loudness graph in a radar configuration. It similarly has lots of options that can be tweaked. Here we go, we can make the display show loudness over a shorter range of time, so it evolves more quickly. If I just skip it ahead to a loud section of the song, there you can see how it looks when the levels are pushed up. And again, you get a great indicator there of how the loudness of your song is evolving over time. And you can dial this speed option back in to show extra resolution if that's what you would like. Okay, it remembers the history in the same way as the new gen meter does, and it has all the same options and statistics available to you. Let me just show that to you with a very loud track.
I'll give you a sign.
So you can see there it's showing the program loudness, it's showing the maximum loudness, and it's showing that massive true peak value as well. The only thing that's missing from this meter, and I probably wouldn't have missed it if I hadn't already used the new gen Viz LM, is the option to see the loudness range. It would be great if TC can add that as a future update, but even so, it's another fantastic option for a loudness meter, and let's face it, it looks really sexy, so maybe that would be good for you. Now, in terms of price, the new gen Viz LM and the TC Electronic LM6 both cost more than $500. Depends exactly on the exchange rate, but I think the LM6 is $599, so they're much more expensive options than either the Brainworks, which is $97 from memory, or the TT meter, which remember you only have to pay $30. But I wanted to just look at a couple of entirely affordable options for you if you're interested in measuring loudness. The first one is PC only and has been released by Caviar Audio. It is an R128 meter, so that's using the European version of this standard. You can see a screenshot of it here. It doesn't have any of the graph facilities, or even, I don't think, the moving meter display, but it will tell you the loudness values for your music at any particular time, and it's free, so that would be a great thing to play around with. I haven't found any other free meters yet. If anybody knows of any, please let me know. But the meter that I want to show you that actually I'm really excited about is made by a company called Klanghelm. You've got to love that name. And it's called the VUMT. It occurred to me the other day, it's actually therefore called the Klanghelm Vumpt, which just makes it even more attractive to me. And you can see the price here. It's 6.28 euros, which is about $9. So it is extremely affordable. And I will just show you that here in my Logic project. Now, this is an emulation of a traditional analog VU meter. So it has needles. And it's actually the kind of meter that I learned to master with when I was training 15 years ago. I find it really, really useful. Even after playing with more sophisticated meters like the TC Electronic and the new gen, it was almost like coming home to play around with this VU meter. So I'm just going to show you how it works. You need to calibrate it first, and you do that with this little number down here in the bottom right hand corner. I tend to master my stuff with it calibrated to -10, which means that 0 here on the meter gives you, roughly speaking, an RMS level of about -10 dBs, which, if you allow it to peak a couple of dBs up into the red, means that your loudest moments are going to be about -8 dBs, which corresponds to a DR value of 8, which is my suggested value for keeping decent dynamic range in your mixes. And that also corresponds to a kind of -8, -9 loudness unit reading with an ITU standard meter. So let me just show you the VU meter working on this song here. So this is a quieter section and the needles are hovering down below 0. We're coming up to a louder moment. And if we skip forward to one of the loudest sections of the song, and I think the thing I like about a VU meter is I find it easier to read than the TT meter or the Brainworks meter. They have these RMS values. You can hear here, one channel is slightly louder than the other, and the RMS is, you know, around about the -8, -9 mark. But I just find these so much easier to read. I can see instantly where the signal level is. I mean, low and high is easy enough to see on the TT meter, but the feel for how high that kick drum is pushing, how high the average level is, and how loud it's overall going to be, I just find it so much easier to read on the VU meters. So I recommend you get them. $9, you can't go wrong. And if you're interested in assessing the level of your own music, let's try it with this really loud Red Hot Chili Peppers track up here. The meter is calibrated to -10, which is my kind of mastering reference. And since this song works with that, we'll stick with that. So we're going to reduce the level of the Chili Peppers song so that it is also hovering around the 0 level on the VU. And then we can do a fair comparison between the two. So I'm just going to adjust the clip gain over here by, I'm going to guess to start with, -6 dBs. Let's see how loud that comes out. Okay, so that's a little bit quiet. Let's adjust it some more. So that's very quickly level match those two. Let's now take a look at how that same information shows up on the new gen meter here, and maybe just for the fun of it, the LM6 as well. So there you go. I hope you found that interesting. Hopefully that gives you a good overview of how these different plugins work and the different information they can give you about your mixes and your masters. I really like them all. The TT meter and the BX meter update are still great tools for judging loudness in a mix. I slightly prefer the Brainworks newer version, whether that's if you already have the TT meter and it's worth it to you to upgrade, that's for you to call. Both the LM6 and the Viz LMH are fantastic. They are obviously quite expensive. The LM6 looks great, but I am really quite addicted to looking at the loudness range feature on the Viz LM. So if TC added that kind of feature to the LM6 in future, then maybe I would shift my allegiance. But like I say, I'm very comfortable using VU meters to judge loudness. You have to take time to learn how to use them. You have to be careful. You need a balanced EQ for them to give you a reliable reading. If you have lots of bass, you'll get a much bigger reading than if you have not enough bass. So you need to learn how to use them, but you will learn a fantastic amount about how music sounds and the way you hear audio by doing that. You can use the setting down here to dial in whatever target dynamic range you like. You can go with my suggestion of 10 dBs. You can dial it down to -14, -16, -18, whatever fits with the music that you're working with. I encourage you to use it. It's $9. Download it. Load up some music that you love. Load up some of your own mixes. Level match them using the meter in your ears. Start thinking about loudness versus crest factor, dynamic range, all of these issues. If you're interested in this, found it helpful and would like to know more, please head over to my website, productionadvice.co.uk. There's a massive information there about EQ, compression, levels, the loudness wars, just making your music sound great. Please check it out. Thanks for listening.